right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for participating in today's FDOT District 5 Roadside Chat Series. I am Claudia Calzaretta, the Florida Scenic Highway Coordinator for District 5. It's wonderful to have you with us today. The Roadside Chats was developed as a way to connect and draw the byway community together, closer together, and by sharing pertinent and valuable information with you. This series is open to anyone and everyone, so please feel free to share it forward with your network. There's no cost to us for this. Our guest speaker today is Lindsey Morrison. As the Grants Director, Lindsey oversees the Community Projects Grant Program and other major grant opportunities at Florida Humanities Council. As a seventh-generation Floridian, hailing from Sarasota, Lindsey holds a Bachelor of Science in Anthropology from Florida State University and a Master's in Anthropology Applied Archaeology from Northern Arizona University. Lindsey speaks on what the humanities truly are and how they give back to the communities. This is right up our alley. And so today's presentation will touch on modern problems through a historic lens, crafting solutions to build a better future. And you will also gain an understanding of the value of funding the humanities in Florida by looking into some of the partners' most transformational grant-funded projects. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Lindsey. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you, Claudia. No, it's really nice to be here with you all. Excited to see so many names and to spread the word of Florida Humanities. So what I'm going to do is pull up my PowerPoint here, and I am going to turn off my camera so that you all can focus on my voice, and I can kind of walk through a little bit about who Florida Humanities is. If you have not heard of us before, not to worry. I'm going to go through that today, and also just kind of an overview about what we do across the state. Many people think that we are a federal agency or in fact associated with the state. We are not. We are a nonprofit. So I will go all into that and then end it with talking about how you can get involved with us both as an individual and as an organization. So as I said, my name is Lindsey Morrison. I'm the Grants Director here at Florida Humanities, and Florida Humanities is the statewide affiliate for the National Endowment for the Humanities. So the National Endowment for the Humanities, short for NEH, or long for NEH, is based in Washington, D.C., and they are a federal agency. And so across all the country, all the states, every state has their own Humanities Council, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And our charge is to receive funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We get an allocation every year, and then we re-grant those funds out to local cultural organizations, museums, libraries, byway organizations to support your public humanities programming. Because as it says here, our mission is really to preserve, promote, and share the history, literature, cultural, and personal stories that offer Floridians a better understanding of themselves, their communities, and their state. So first off, let's define the humanities, right? Because it can be a little bit of a nebulous topic. And the reason that is because it covers so many disciplines. As you can see here, I've kind of listed the disciplines out, and they range from history, literature, poetry, gender studies, archaeology, which is my subset, and civics. I won't read them all, but it is a lot. And so what people normally think of when they think of the humanities is this guy, right? Aristotle, Plato, people who existed a long time ago that maybe don't have a huge relevance to today. And that could not be farther from the truth. And that's really what I want to start this presentation out by reiterating, because humanities at its core is truly the process of pursuing an understanding of our shared human experience. And it really allows us to think creatively and critically, to reason and to ask questions. What I like to say a lot of times is the humanities fosters that dialogue between two different people or two different groups of people or 5 different groups of people that may have different understandings of the world, different perspectives, maybe different cultural backgrounds. So they experience the world in a different way than our neighbors do or ourselves do. And so the humanities is that vessel through which we can all come together to learn about each other's experiences and to have that light bulb, that proverbial light bulb appear above our heads, that aha moment that says, wow, I did not think of it that way. I did not think that, they thought of the world that way. That's really neat. That helps me understand how I perceive the world and how we're all living in it in just a different kind of experience. So as we know from the past few years, the humanities could not be more relevant. And it is not just in the realm of Aristotle and Plato. It is very, very active today. And we saw this by Amanda Gorman, who was brought to the recent inauguration and just astounded the crowd and millions of people across the globe by her poem. And it was that poem, which is, poetry is a subset of the humanities, that made a lot of people pause and think and gave you goosebumps. That is the humanities. It enabled us to think about someone else's lived experiences in a way that we had not thought of before. So, the humanities really are, of course, my passion, but they really are everybody's passion, whether you know it now or going to realize it after this presentation. We really enjoy and need to hear the perspectives of others. So what Florida Humanities does is we fund the humanities, and specifically public humanities programming, right? It is that active engagement between the public, with humanities scholars, and with the organization that is putting on the programming to kind of foster those conversations, create those really grounded dialogues. And that I want to hit home here, because while we fund the humanities, yes, humanities informed programming, what we are really interested in funding is that public aspect of it, that engagement with the humanities. One example is, of course, an exhibit, right? Or I'll give an oral history project. So the collection of oral histories are very, very important, right? Because they collect the stories, the lived experiences of people in your community that maybe aren't going to be around for much longer, and we need to harvest those memories. But public humanities programming is, yes, the collection of those oral histories, but then the presentation of those stories back to the general public to engage them in a deep level of conversation about what those histories mean, what we can learn from it, what it means about our past, and what it means for the future going forward. So I say that all to let you know that public humanities programming is what we truly fund here at Florida Humanities. And there has to be that active level of engagement.
Did we lose Lindsey? I don't hear her.
Oh, I don't either. Oh, where did Lindsey go? Uh-oh.
She's muted.
I think I got muted for some, I think it was an automatic mute, but I think I'm back on, right?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. So I was just talking about how we fund different, we create different grant programs across the state that get at different topic areas of the humanities. And so we seek applications for each one. So what I wanted to go through today is kind of pull out one sample successful project from each of those different funding streams and kind of give you an overview of that. So looking back at 2020, we funded 170 grants in the past year, and in total 1.2 million in funding awarded. Now I will say that does account for 875,000 of money through the CARES Act that we regranted out through the the emergency relief funding. But in general, our grants pool is around 400 to 500,000 a year. So the first one I wanted to go over is with the UWF Historic Trust, starting off at Pensacola. From time to time, we enter into partnerships with Smithsonian Institution to bring in high quality exhibits across the state partnering with a local Florida organization to host that exhibit. And then we also support complementary public humanities programming. And now, since y'all are experts in public humanities programming, you know that is actively engaging the public with some humanities disciplines, history, heritage, and culture. So we supported $20,000 to host an exhibit at the Pensacola Museum of Art. And the exhibit we brought in was 100 Faces of War. So you can see here some of the images from it. So these are paintings from one artist that portrayed veterans, people who were in the armed forces and their experiences. And so it really showed the range of diversity of people that are involved in our armed forces. And so what we also funded was community conversations, lecture series, those more active public engagement components, as well as the traveling exhibit, the ability for this museum to host it and really bring the community out to engage with this content and think more deeply about themselves and about our neighbors. So another one we funded was with a great partner of ours. We fund quite a few projects with them. This is the Village Square in Tallahassee, Florida. If you have not heard of them before, I highly recommend you check them out. They're doing some very groundbreaking work up there. And so we funded in 2020 a virtual series with them. There was no in-person programming, of course, everything was virtual in 2020. And they put on a program called A Citizen's Guide to Healing America, Let Friendship Redeem the Republic. And what they specialize in is bringing people from across the aisle, across the political aisle, to have open conversations with each other. And this is important to note because the humanities is not necessarily making people agree with one another. It's providing that space for you to hear one another in a respectful and understanding way, because we all come about our ideas through our own lived experiences, whether or not the other person may think that they are the truth or not. But the important thing is to hear each other out and to kind of really foster that empathetic mind, that understanding, and to ground it in each other's own lived experiences and to understand each other more. So again, here are just some graphics from that program. That was we held one program earlier this year in February, as you can see here. So there may be some recorded sessions available on their website, or you can check out more of their work. And we also are funding some other projects through them as well. So as you look through their website, you can see our logo and some efforts we are doing ongoing with them. A really exciting grant that we launched in 2020 was in partnership with actually PBS Books, and this was called Life, Liberty, and Libraries. And through this effort, our partnership with PBS Books, we created 3 book lists, one for adults, young adults, and children, and then a Spanish language children's book lists, and offered up to $2,500 specifically for libraries that they could go off this book list and buy civics and democracy themed books for circulation, either hard copy or digital. So we had about, I think, almost 20 libraries funded across the state last year in an effort just to make these resources more accessible to different communities and perhaps diversify their selections if they didn't have books that represent different people's perspectives, lived experiences. They were able to use these funds to purchase those books and also bring in humanities scholars or civics professors to have engaging, in this case, virtual programming to go along with those new books. And you can see here they got very creative. One of the libraries had a voting contest for their kids, where the kids could vote on which book they liked the best, and they had different characters that they kind of voted on. So it was a mock trial sort of situation, which was very fun. But the main grant I really want to talk to you all about today with the Florida Scenic Byways is our Community Project Grants program. This is our main bread and butter program here at Florida Humanities. It is offered every single year. Of course, the ones I just talked about are special initiative grants. We fund, one similar to those each year. They sometimes are the same, sometimes are different. Community project grants are always going to be around. And we have about 4 deadlines every single year for you to apply for. And what these grants are is up to $5,000 to support public humanities programming that is of interest and need to the local community. So kind of think of it as a seed grant or a grant that really funds your needs. Now, of course, there are eligibility requirements. We will get back into at the end of the presentation. I wanted to give you an overview right now, and then we'll go back to it. But community project grants is really what you want to focus on. So the example here is we funded $5,000 at the Polk Museum of Art, and their topic was Art and Social Justice, Legacy of the Freedom Riders. So what they did is they brought in a clip of a PBS film, The Freedom Riders. And so they showed it in the auditorium, and they actually had people who were involved in this movement, in the civil rights movement, who participated in these freedom rides, speak to the audience, which is around 300 people. And I had the privilege of attending this in late 2019. And they also brought in humanities scholars to ground it in scholarship and, their sort of academic perspectives and disciplines. And it was such a profound conversation that not only educated people who did not know about this era of history, or these rides in particular, or how the different people who were involved in it, kind of came to the table, but it also allowed people to understand others from their own perspectives and to hear, how it impacts their lives to this day. So it was truly a spectacular program that I like to say this is one that is a great success story of community project grants, because it also marries two disciplines. It marries art and it marries the humanities. We do not fund art projects, but what we fund is we fund the humanities discussions that can happen around these art projects. So this artist in particular, you see the young child in around the yellow at the bottom of the picture, he recreated the photographs of when people were arrested due to the freedom rides. And so he did those, I think in charcoal it was, and it was a very, very moving exhibit. So we funded the film screening, and we also funded the scholars that came in, and then the community experts, the people that actually lived through this time and these experiences. And the next program I wanted to briefly talk to you about, there's not a current funding opportunity for this, but there will be one in a couple of years. So this is a prime great grant for you to keep in the back of your mind and then apply for when it comes around again. And this is our Museum on Main Street program. So we partner with the Smithsonian Institution on the regular to offer every year the opportunity for 5 communities across Florida to bring in a traveling exhibit, and the exhibit changes every year. This one that I'm talking about in this presentation is Hometown Teams, and one of the sites that hosted it was the Sulphur Springs Heritage Center. So I will also say the exhibit that we are bringing in this year with the Smithsonian is called Waterways. 7 sites were selected by Florida Humanities to tour it around the state. The first site, I think, was the exhibit's opening in June of 2021, so later this month, and it will go to September of 2022. So the exhibit that's probably going to come back in 2022 or 2023 is unknown at this time, but keep a watch on that. But Museum on Main Street, so we fund the exhibit that tours at that site. They just apply for the grant, and then we say, okay, we had, I think, about 20 different main streets apply for this opportunity. 7 were selected. So they are not only awarded the exhibit, but they are also awarded $5,000 to host complimentary public humanities programming to go along with it. And this is very impactful for a lot of communities, because Museum on Main Street brings high quality exhibits right to their people and their citizens who need it most, who maybe as a family of 4 or 5 or 6 have a difficult time traveling to DC to see these high class exhibits. We bring the exhibits to them. So it's just such a great partnership with Smithsonian. We're excited for Waterways, and we do encourage you to go visit one of the tour sites this year if you're interested in learning more about that. The final grant I wanted to talk to you about was our Florida Talks funding opportunity, and there is a deadline coming up for that as well, just like with community project grants. So those two I will go in more detail later, but this example I wanted to give was the Friends of Monroe County Public Library in Key West. And through this grant, we offer $1,000 to bring in speakers from our speakers directory. And you can see it here in the top left. We have 53 speakers right now in our speakers directory. And between those 53 speakers, they have about 100 different programs that they run. And by programs, I mean these are speaking topics. So for example, I am speaking on grants, so I would be listed in the speakers directory, perhaps as, talking about grants of Florida Humanities. So their topics range from civics to the environment to tourism, literature, storytelling, folklore. So there's lots of really engaging Florida-focused topics. And this $1,000 enable you to bring in between 1 and 3 of these speakers to your community. And they can charge no more than $300 for your honoraria, which means you have some extra change to put towards promotion, perhaps travel to bring in the speakers if they're in person. This really is such a great templated opportunity to bring in engaging speakers to your community, and a good foot in the door too for Florida Humanities grants. Maybe you wanted to try for a Florida Talks grant. And the deadline's in a couple weeks, which I'll also go into, and then maybe also a community project grant a little later on. So that's just an option. So now the fun part, we're going to talk about how you can get involved as an individual and then as an organization. And that's where I'm really going to tell that you should reach out to me and chat about our funding opportunities. But as an individual, there are other ways that you can get involved. The basic, just not a lot of committal level is to share us, to talk about us, and to talk about us with your legislators. This is very important because, as we know, nonprofits couldn't exist without support of our members and without support of people who care about us, who are talking about us at their dinner conversations, or with people they're going out to lunch with, or maybe you want to pick up the phone and call your legislator and say, hey, Florida Humanities is doing a great job. And we think that, they could also do a great job with state funding because we are a nonprofit organization. We do get funding from the federal government for the National Endowment for the Humanities. But as a nonprofit, like many of you all are very familiar with, we also advocate for state funding as well. So if you are so inclined, we encourage you to kind of ring that bell a little bit, and we could surely use it. So another opportunity for you as an individual is to sign up, just to stay informed. This is also a very low-level commitment. Sign up for our e-news, sign up to receive our award-winning Forum magazine, which comes out 3 or 4 times a year. And this is a very, very popular magazine. I think this is how Florida Scenic Byways helped find me, and through our grants program offerings that we had listed in Forum. And then you could attend a virtual event. We have an events calendar on our website. So like those Florida Talks programs that I was talking to you about just a moment ago, all of those events that we have funded through Florida Talks are on our website. So you could register for it if they are virtual and then sign up and attend one evening. It's a great program maybe to see if this is something that you are interested in for your organization. And then if you wanted to take that extra step, say you're really invested in us and you want to become a more closer friend, you could make a donation. You could make a one-time donation to Florida Humanities, or you could become a sustainer, which is $20 a month. That's really not much. It's the cost of a lunch out or a dinner out to support the public humanities programming that we do. That enables us to really bring people together and have those good conversations. Or just you could encourage your friends to join. Say maybe you're already a member, you can encourage your friends to become a member as well, or just if you know someone who's interested in reaching out to us to learn more, feel free to connect them to me. Now, as an organization, okay, so now we've talked about if you are interested in donating to us. Now I'm going to talk about how we can help you with some funding. So these are the 2 funding opportunities that I really want to hone in with you all today and talk to you about. So I already mentioned both of them. Community project grants is the main grant program that I run. We have 4 deadlines every year. There are 2 deadlines that are coming up still in 2021 that you can aim for. It's July 21. So you have a little more than a month now. That is plenty of time to plan for that event. If you want to have a conversation with me, do reach out. I'm going to turn on my camera and we can have a question and answer session at the end, but hopefully you'll see I'm a person. I like to have conversations with folks and to help you craft a program that could be eligible for funding. They are 1-year grants. So if you are awarded funding and if you apply for funding July 21st and you're awarded a grant on September 1st, you have 1 year to complete that grant, $5,000. There is a match that is required. So if you ask for $5,000, you must show $5,000 in cost share, which can be either in kind, which is those donated services, or cash. But what I really wanted to encourage you all to do as well is to sign up to attend a webinar that we have. We have an upcoming webinar on June 18th. I'm happy to send a link around to everybody at the end of this presentation, or send it to Tia, and she'll be happy, and Claudia, and they'll be happy to send it out to you all. Or you can schedule a one-on-one call with me, and happy to go that route as well. And then Florida Talks. There are normally 2 deadlines per year. The next deadline we have is June 25th, and that funds any programming that you want to run in the fall of 2021. So like I said, we have webinars through Grant Ed. That is our new hub for all of these webinars, grant trainings. There are also on-demand webinars that I held earlier this year that recorded just like this session, and you can watch that one evening or one day if you're so inclined, and then hop on the June 18th one to maybe ask any questions live with all of your fellow interested grantees on that webinar. So we have 2 upcoming for community project grants, and then the Florida Talks webinars just concluded at the end of last week, but there is one available on demand for you to watch to see if you're interested in that program. Because all in all, the whole purpose of Florida Humanities is to support you and your work. Maybe as a Florida Scenic Byways, you have really wanted to engage your community and your history more, the history, heritage, and culture of your region. And Florida Humanities can be your cultural organization that can fund speakers, scholars, to host engaging presentations, to host a film and lecture series, panel discussions. Maybe there's an art exhibit and you want to bring in scholars to really deepen those conversations. We are your neighborhood state humanities council to support those efforts. And it really is our pleasure. We love doing it. We love having these conversations with folks every day to hear what they are doing. So I really want to thank you all for having me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have. I know I went through the grant programs rather quickly, so I can answer any questions about those, or we can chat offline individually if your Scenic Byways is interested in having that conversation.
Thank you, Lindsey. This is a great presentation. We have a couple of comments in the chat box. The first one is, has any scenic highway ever applied for a grant with you?
That's a good question. Not in the past 2 years that I have been here, I want to say, but what I can do is I can look through the system later and see if the Scenic Byways has applied. And if not, this is a perfect opportunity for someone here to apply for a grant.
Well, it's a very perfect opportunity. So I want to ask something, but I'm going to wait for the question down below. The next one is, what types of skills are required to write a grant application with the council?
Great question. Because I know that a lot of grant applications can be intimidating, right? You hear the word grant or the word cost share, and it kind of makes you like, oh, I'm not a grant writer. I don't know how to do that. And just know that everybody has started out at some place in the grant writing world. If you can explain your project in simple terms, like if you're walking into an elevator and explaining it to your elevator partner, what project you want to do, and then if you can put down numbers on a page, that's a great place to start to be able to write a grant. Our grant applications are online, and what they involve is writing narrative responses to questions that we have in the online application, downloading a budget form, which we also have a budget explanation sheet that kind of walks through the different fields. But also I am here to really walk you through the process. If you have never applied for a grant before, Florida Humanities is what we like to say a good gateway grant. It is a great place to start. We try not to be intimidating about it, and that's why we also offer webinars. I can get on Zoom with you. We can go through and do walkthroughs through Zoom one-on-one. So happy to really explain anything. And I've heard every question and all questions before, so don't feel embarrassed by your question if you think it's simple. It's really not, and I really do appreciate your questions.
You cannot go wrong with this, folks. I mean, she's willing to have a Zoom one-on-one with you to walk you through the process. This is a win-win for everyone. I have questions, but I'm going to hold off till the end. So there's a comment here. Students along our byway created a children's book on the history of Flagler County. Could a grant help fund the printing of our book?
That's a good question. That would be more of funding a research project or funding a publication project. So no, we would not be able to fund the publication of books. We get that question from time to time. But what we could support is if your book was published by another, maybe you got a grant from somewhere else, that could be recorded as cost share. And then what you could ask for funding for us for is bringing in the author, the series of authors, maybe a couple students, and some other humanities scholars to present that book to the public and maybe a public forum situation, and talk about the history of your county. That's a kind of project we could support with that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so this one you answered. This question is, do grants require a match, and can in-kind be the match? So
yes.
Yes.
Yes and yes. So all of our grants require at least a one-to-one match. But what we like to say is we require you to record all of your cost share that you have associated with the project. And in the webinars, I go into it more, and I actually break down cost share as simple as an example of a lemonade stand. So you really kind of, you can understand what cost share is, and I'll just explain it broadly to the group. Cost share is everything budgetarily associated with your project that is outside the funds we are giving to you. So just for example, in the lemonade stand, if we give you $200 to buy lemons, your cost share would be everything else associated with that lemonade stand outside of the lemons. So that would be donated table from your friend, the time it takes to manage that table from your friend at $10 for 15 hours or $15 for 10 hours. So it's every other cost associated with the success of that project. So while a one-to-one match is required, you have to show that for our grants. We encourage you to think about all cost share. And that is because we also have to record cost share to the federal government every year, because we have to match our funding that we get from them, that we re-grant out to you. So you recording all your eligible cost share helps us in filtering that back up to the federal government.
Boy, I keep saying this is a win-win. The byways win and the humanities councils win, because if they spend the money by giving it away, then they can get more money the next year. This is great. Okay, so do your grants pay up front, or are they reimbursable?
Great question. So our grants are paid for community project grants. We'll talk about that one. As soon as you sign the contract, and you do have to have a DUNS number. So I see Kathleen asked that question in there. So as soon as your DUNS number is verified, we check that and then make sure you are registered in a system online called sam.gov. It is free to register. It's free to seek help from them for that. And we even give you a quick guide on how to register your organization if you're not already in that. But it's just basically the federal government making sure your organization is in good standing. And then we see that, make sure your organization is in good standing. And then so long as you sign your contract, you are registered in sam.gov, you can request 90% of your award up front. So if you get a $5,000 grant, you can receive $4,500 within the first month. Or within the first couple weeks if you're already registered in sam.gov and you signed your contract and send it back to us. And then the final 10% is provided upon as a reimbursement after you fill out your final report, and we make sure everything was spent as it was awarded to be spent.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Is the grant only for not-for-profit?
So we do award grants to cities, public institutions like universities or humanities departments at universities, libraries, museums, historical societies. You do not have to be a registered 501c3, but you do have to be a not-for-profit organization. We don't award grants, I will say this, to individuals or to for-profit organizations.
Excellent. And Maggie says, hi, Lindsey, getting ready to file the final report for the River to Sea Nature and History Corridor Lost History Week, which she partnered with the Enterprise Museum and Stetson. Thank you for your support. And she has a few questions. Can she call you later today?
Yes, yeah, Maggie, shoot me an email and let's set up a time to chat because I got a few meetings, but we'll try to work around it. And I'm free actually all day tomorrow, so we can also chat tomorrow.
So the next question is a good one. Do you use the IRS rate of $24 an hour for volunteer time?
Yes. Easy answer, yes.
and that changes from year to year as well. So if you can just check on the IRS website, it might be $24.69 to this year and $24.96 next year.
Yes, and I will say too on that, if your organization has a budget that's rather tight, I know a lot of folks are coming out of 2020 and the pandemic. Do keep in mind that cost share, and I don't know if I answered this fully a moment ago, but cost share can be made up of a combination of in-kind and cash, entirely cash, or entirely in-kind. So your cost share can be made up of a lot of it, could be volunteer time. Maybe you have 10 volunteers that are working an extraordinary amount of hours at $24 an hour. That does make up for a lot of cost share. Or if you have other partner organizations that are donating their promotional efforts, maybe they're posting on Facebook for free or putting out, you have a partnership with a public media station and they're putting it out for free, you could record the cost of what that would be as cost share in kind. So don't be intimidated by cost share.
Awesome. And thank you for stressing that, because I think, like you said earlier, when folks hear grant, they do get intimidated, because some grants are intimidating and they're difficult. So who actually reviews and rates your grants, and how do they get approved?
Yes, that is another very good question. So our community project grants are reviewed by a panel of scholars. They range in different disciplines in the humanities, but there's normally about 4 to 5 different panelists that get all of the grants that are submitted, that are eligible for funding and that are submitted, and we review them based on a rubric, and then we come together to evaluate and talk about all of those grants. And then if I have any questions about your grant project, then I will normally get back to you prior to the notification date, and you say, hey, your project could be recommended for funding pending you just give me a few bits of information that evaluators had questions on. And on the evaluation panel, I'll also note that in the later half of last year, we really made an effort to increase our evaluation panel to make sure we had diverse backgrounds, different perspectives, different disciplines. So we did a statewide calling for humanities scholars to apply to join this evaluation panel, and did increase that. So we're really happy with the group that we have now, who I will say anonymous. I won't say their names. But one benefit of having these great scholars evaluating all of these proposals is that should you be denied a community project grant, then you can request their evaluation comments, which are greatly detailed, very substantial, and then use those comments to perfect your application and submit it in a next grant cycle. So we see a lot of people who are denied one round, ask for the evaluation comments, apply again, and are awarded funding for that project. So Excellent. Don't get discouraged.
Exactly, and that's what's so exciting about your program. You just lay it all out there and make it seem like it's so easy, dare I say.
Well, these are public funds, so I think in our sense, we see it as our duty to make it as streamlined and as simple as possible for you to support your programming. Yes. It shouldn't be a secret society of humanities clubs. This is really just truly public humanities programming.
Excellent. So I'm looking to see if I've missed any questions. I think I got them all. I have one concerning the Florida talks. Now, I've been on your website and I've seen a bunch of speakers there. So say I'm a nonprofit and I'd like to have a guest speaker virtually. And so I reach out and I apply and I get $1,000. Did I hear correctly that they typically charge $3.50 an hour, or no?
No, that's a good question. So we have what's the speakers directory, and that's what I referenced, and we have 53 speakers on there right now. So we have contracted with all of them, and they have agreed to charge no more than $300 for their honoraria flat. So if you have 3 speakers and they speak on 3 different presentations, each of those will charge $300 or no more than $300 for their presentation. It could be a 2-hour presentation, a 1.5-hour presentation, but it's $300 is what it is. And we did that to make our these speakers more equitable, you know, make it so that everyone can access these different speakers no matter their background. Some of them are really renowned, so we wanted to make it accessible, that's the word, to everybody, no matter your financial background.
What are the lengths of their talks, the presentations? Are they an hour? Are they half an hour?
They're normally 1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah.
Wow, that is exciting.
Yes, a $3,000 or $1,000 for 3 hours of speaking is pretty good. You do have to, of course, show the match still for that one. But that can be made up of, you know, your programmatic time spent on it. You know, and Lisa Lennox is actually my colleague who is running that program. So if any of you are interested in Florida Talks, shoot me an email and then I will loop her into that conversation and help you get that conversation going, because the deadline for that is June 25th. So that is just about 3 weeks from now. But the application for Florida Talks is very streamlined. The budget form is entirely built into the application, so you don't have to download a separate form. You just have to fill out, you know, what speakers you are bringing in. That's something you need to confirm in advance. Reach out to the speakers, you know, confirm they're going to speak on this topic and this time frame, and then apply. So I think all that can be done in a couple weeks, and it's
excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I put some links in the chat box. I put the link to the Humanities homepage. I put, Lindsay, I hope you don't mind, I put your email address in there as well. And as everybody knows, this talk has been recorded. And if you want to, you know, if you forgot something or you want to revisit, we are posting it on the link in the chat box called the Central Florida Scenic Byways. We have a dedicated YouTube channel. Every roadside chat is posted there, as well as our Roadside Travelers, which is capturing oral histories. So there's a nice mix of things on that YouTube channel. So I want to go to any live questions. Does anybody want to ask anything at all? Okay, well, if you
When's your next speaker going to talk? And what's it about?
For Florida Talks? Or
no, next Roadside Chat, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Mike, I didn't hear everything you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking when your next Roadside Chat is scheduled for.
Oh, well, the next Roadside Chat is scheduled June 10th at 6:30 in the evening. It's the first one that we're doing in the evening. Our guest speaker will be Melissa Lammers, speaking about wildlife and nature. And I haven't seen the presentation yet, but it's exciting. And it's actually going to be hosted by the Ormond Scenic Loop and Trail. And it's our first evening one, so it'll coincide nicely with folks just after dinner time or during dinner. So I put the links in the chat box. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. As always, very informative, and I appreciate your time and your efforts today. And with that, if anybody has any questions and didn't get Lindsay's email, reach out to me and I'll get you the information that you might need to you as soon as possible.